The first thing Dara noticed when she returned from off-rotation leave was that nobody was walking in the lower corridor. That was strange. The lower corridor connected the docking ring to the cargo wing and the science labs. It was usually the busiest stretch of Vora's station, full of rolling supply carts, technicians arguing in 3 languages, and the persistent smell of whatever the Torathi kitchen was burning that day. Now it was empty, lights on, carts parked, no one. She stopped a dockworker near the junction and asked what happened. He stared at her. Then he pointed toward the cargo wing and said 3 words in broken common tongue, "Do not go." Then he left quickly. Dara pulled up the station incident log on her wrist unit and read while she walked. The log was long. 3 days ago, a sealed cargo crate had been found in Bay 7 during a routine inventory check. It was not on the manifest. When a cargo handler opened it, something inside moved very fast and the man lost 2 fingers. The next day, a security officer attempted to subdue the occupant with a containment rod. The rod was destroyed. The officer was in medical, with 4 slash wounds across her forearm. After that, the cargo wing was sealed. A Galactic Union emergency signal had been sent. Everyone was waiting. Dara read the species assessment attached to the incident log. She read it twice. Then she went to the station canteen, ate a meal she had been looking forward to for 2 weeks, and borrowed a container of high-protein slurry from Dr. Novel's cold storage. He was not there. She left him a note. Commander Sevik was waiting at the sealed blast door. He was a tall Torathi with gray-green skin and the expression of someone who had not slept in 3 days. He looked at the container in Dara's hand. He looked at her face. He said, very carefully, "No." She said, "It is a hatchling, probably 6 to 8 weeks old, based on the slash depth in the incident reports. At that age, they need to eat every 4 hours or their stress levels climb fast. High stress in a confined space makes them more dangerous, not less." Sevik said, 2 people are already injured. They approached it without food and with a containment rod, she said. That is not a strategy. That is a provocation. I am going to sit down and wait. If it does not eat in 40 minutes, I will leave and we discuss other options. Sevik tried to find a regulation that applied. There was not one. Nothing like this had happened before on any Union station. He opened the blast door. He said, "I am watching on the cameras. If it moves toward you, drop the container and run." She walked in without answering. The cargo wing was dim. Half the lights had been switched off because the Vreth species was documented as highly sensitive to sudden brightness. The crates were stacked in long rows. The air smelled metallic and sharp. The hatchling was in the far left corner. Dara stopped and looked. She did not run. She did not raise her hands. She stood still and let it look at her. It was smaller than she expected. Crouched on 4 limbs, the 5th pair folded tight against its body. Scales deep gray with faint green along the spine. Eyes enormous, pupils wide in the low light, irises pale amber. It was watching her with the kind of focus that made most species look away. Dara did not look away. She walked to a crate 3 meters from the corner, sat down, placed the container on the floor between them, and opened the top so the scent would carry. Then she put her hands on her knees and waited. The hatchling hissed. Long and low, its crest rose, its weight shifted forward. Dara did not move. A minute passed. The hissing stopped. The crest dropped slightly. The amber eyes moved to the container, then back to her face. She said quietly, "I know, I would be angry too." 2 more minutes. Then the hatchling moved, not toward her, toward the container. It ate in fast, precise movements, never fully looking away. When the container was empty, it retreated to the corner and sat, watching, but the crest was flat. The weight was settled. The aggression had gone out of its posture the way heat leaves a room, slowly until the whole temperature was different. Dara stood, picked up the empty container, and walked back to the blast door. On the other side, Sevik was staring at the camera feed. He said nothing for a moment. Then, "How did you know it would not attack you?" "I did not know," she said. "I just did not assume it would." She asked him to put her on morning shift in the cargo wing starting tomorrow. He agreed before he understood what he was agreeing to. Nobody told Dara to name it. She just needed something to write in her logs that was shorter than the Vreth Hatchling Bay 7, unregistered. So she wrote Rin. It was short. It was easy to type. It had no particular meaning, which felt appropriate for a creature that had arrived with no explanation. By day 4, she had a routine. She arrived at the cargo wing at the same time every morning, carrying 2 containers of protein slurry. She sat in the same spot on the same crate. She opened the containers, set them on the floor, and she talked. Not to Rin specifically. She talked the way she always did when she was working, a running commentary. She dictated her observations into her recorder out loud because she found it helped her think. She noted the crest position, the posture, the eye contact duration. She noted whether Rin ate quickly or slowly. She noted which direction the hatchling faced while resting. Rin watched her the entire time. By day 5, the hissing had stopped entirely. By day 6, Rin no longer shifted into an alert posture when the blast door opened. By day 7, something changed that Dara logged carefully and without drama. Rin crossed half the distance between them without any food prompt, sat down, and watched her from closer range. She wrote, "Subject is demonstrating voluntary proximity behavior. No food incentive present. Possible curiosity response. Will observe." She did not mention that her heart rate had jumped when Rin moved. She was a scientist. That was not relevant data. Dr. Novel, on the other hand, was losing his mind. He had been watching the camera feeds from his lab station every day. He was a senior Torathi researcher with 4 published works on predator cognition, and he had never once been inside the cargo wing. He sent Dara her first message on day 5, a long, precisely worded request for access to her observation notes. She sent back a summary. He replied immediately with 12 follow-up questions. She answered 4 of them and told him the others would require more time. By day 8, he was sending 3 messages a day. She replied when she had something worth saying. On day 8, Rin knocked the recorder out of her hand. It happened quickly. She had been holding it up, speaking into it, describing the iridescence pattern on the spine when the light caught it a certain way. Rin moved fast from a sitting position, one limb shooting out, and the recorder hit the floor. Dara went still. Rin went still. They looked at each other. Rin's weight was forward, braced, waiting for what came next. This was the test. Every creature Rin had encountered before responded to sudden movement with either aggression or retreat. Dara reached down, picked up the recorder, checked it for damage, found none, and kept talking. "Iridescence strongest along the 3rd and 4th dorsal ridge," she said. "Possibly a stress-coloring response or a species-typical pigment pattern. Insufficient data yet to determine which." Rin stared at her for a long time. Then it sat back down. Dara logged the incident that evening. Subject initiated physical contact with equipment. Possible testing behavior. Subject observed human response to sudden action and received no threat or flight reaction. Recommend continued routine without modification. Sevik read her logs every night. He did not sleep well. The Union envoy was still 12 days out. 2 of his crew had formally requested reassignment. A 3rd had stopped eating in the common canteen and was taking all meals in his quarters. Dara was not aware of any of this because she was in the cargo wing. On day 9, she arrived to find Rin already sitting in the middle of the room rather than the corner. She set down the containers, sat in her usual spot, opened her recorder, and started talking. Rin ate, then did not go back to the corner. It stayed in the middle of the room, closer to her than to the wall. Dara noted the distance in her log. She noted it again the next morning when the distance was smaller. She noted the pattern across the days in a neat column of numbers, watching it shrink, the way a scientist watches a variable move in a direction that means something. She did not say what it meant out loud, but she stopped borrowing protein slurry from Novel's stores and started submitting a formal daily requisition. Whatever this was, it was going to continue for a while. On the other side of the blast door, Sevik and Novel watched the same footage in silence. Novel said, "She is not doing anything special." Sevik said, "I know. She is just sitting there." "I know. That is somehow the most terrifying thing I have ever seen," Novel said. Sevik said nothing, because he agreed completely. Nobody planned for Dara to fall asleep in the cargo wing. It happened because she had been covering double shifts for 6 days while the station ran a full systems review, and because she sat down to write her evening notes and the words on the screen started blurring, and because the cargo wing was quiet and the low lights were easy on her eyes, and because she was simply a person who had run out of energy at the wrong moment in the wrong place. She did not mean to, she just did. The station cameras recorded everything. At the 23rd hour of the station cycle, Dara's head dropped forward. Her recorder slipped from her fingers onto her knee. Her breathing slowed and steadied into the long rhythm of proper sleep. She did not move again. Rin was 6 meters away when it happened. The hatchling watched. For a long time it simply watched. This was new behavior. The human had never done this before. The human had always left when the session was done, walking back through the big door in the same calm, unhurried way she arrived. Now the human was not leaving. The human was making low, even sounds and not moving. Rin moved closer, 2 meters, stopped, watched. Nothing happened. The human continued not moving. Rin moved closer again, 1 meter. It lowered its head and smelled the air near Dara's boot. It touched the boot with one limb once and pulled back fast. The human shifted slightly but did not wake. Rin waited. The human was still. It circled her, slowly, looking at her from every angle. Then it looked at the door, then back at the human. Then it seemed to make a decision the way most creatures make decisions, without drama, without ceremony, and it lay down against her side, tucked its head near her shoulder and closed its eyes. The camera in the upper corner of the cargo wing recorded all of it in silent, steady footage. At 2 in the morning, station time, Sevik woke to an alert from the monitoring system. He watched the feed for 4 minutes without moving. Then he called Dr. Novel. Novel picked up on the second signal. Sevik sent him the feed without explanation. There was silence on the line for a long time. Then Novel said, "Is she alive?" Sevik said. "Her biosign monitor shows normal sleep. She does not know." Another silence. "What do we do?" Sevik had no answer. There was no procedure for this. There was no Galactic Union protocol titled, "What to do when a Vreth hatchling voluntarily uses a sleeping crew member as a resting surface." He considered sounding an alert. He considered opening the blast door remotely. He considered both of these options for a full 2 minutes and then he did neither, because every instinct he had said that startling either of them right now was the worst possible choice. He kept watching. By dawn, 6 other crew members were clustered at the safe end of the lower corridor, watching the camera relay screen that Novel had switched to public display. Nobody spoke. A Gorathi engineer had one hand pressed flat over her mouth. A Torathi technician was gripping the railing with both hands. Dara woke at her usual time, because her body had been trained to do that. She opened her eyes. She looked at the screen of her recorder, still sitting on her knee. She looked at the ceiling. She felt the weight against her side and looked down. Rin was asleep. Its head was resting near her shoulder. Its crest was fully flat, a posture that the Vreth behavioral notes described as observed only during deep rest in conditions of perceived total safety. Dara did not move for a moment. Then she reached very slowly into her jacket pocket, found her recorder, and pressed the record key. She said quietly, "Day 11. 0600 hours approximate. Subject is in full rest posture against observer's left side, crest fully flat, breathing regular. I am going to estimate this began sometime after 2300 last night based on my own rest period. She paused. I fell asleep in the field. That is my fault and I will note it in the summary. She stayed still. Outside on the camera relay nobody breathed. Rin woke a few minutes later. It opened its pale amber eyes, looked at Dara and did not move away. It simply looked. Then it lowered its chin back down. Dara said into her recorder, subject is awake, has not moved to a different position, appears comfortable. She stopped. Then she added, this is significant data. Sevek sent a message to the Union envoy that morning. The previous message had described the situation as a dangerous containment crisis. This message described it as an unprecedented behavioral development and asked the envoy to approach with additional flexibility. He did not attach the footage. He did not need to. It was already spreading through the crew relay channels from person to person, image still to image still, until it reached the docking networks and kept going from there. Counselor Bray arrived 12 days later on a small Union escort vessel and walked off the docking ramp like someone who had already decided what she was going to do. She was Torathi, senior rank, with a long career in crisis assessment. She had handled rogue AI containment on a mining station, a biological contamination event on a colony ship, and a territorial dispute between 3 species that ended with 2 of them agreeing never to share a sector again. She was very good at her job. She had watched the footage on the journey over. She had watched it several times. She still had not decided how she felt about it. Sevek briefed her in the command room. Novel presented his preliminary data. Bray asked precise questions and took notes and showed nothing on her face. Then she asked to speak with Dara. Dara arrived from the cargo wing. She was carrying an empty container and had a data pad tucked under one arm. She sat down across from Bray and waited. Bray said, "Walk me through what you did." Dara walked her through it, plainly, step by step, from the first day with the protein slurry to the current morning, which had included a feeding, 40 minutes of observation, and what she now called a comfort proximity session, which was a clinical way of saying that Rin sat against her while she wrote notes. Bray listened to all of it, then she said, "You named it." "I needed something for the logs," Dara said. "Rin is short." Bray looked at her notes. "My mandate from the Union is to assess the threat level and determine whether continued presence of the subject on this station is sustainable or whether termination is the appropriate response." Dara said, "Termination is not the appropriate response." Bray said, "I have not made a determination yet." "I understand," Dara said, "but I want to be clear about my position before you begin your assessment." Bray looked at her for a moment. Then she said she wanted to observe Rin directly. Dara agreed. She carried the morning's second feeding container and walked with Bray to the cargo wing. Sevek followed at a distance. Novel watched from the corridor camera feed because he had not managed to get himself into the room in 2 weeks and was not about to try now. Dara opened the blast door and stepped in. Bray followed. Rin was in the center of the room. When the door opened, it looked up. It saw Dara and its posture settled. Then it saw Bray. It went rigid. The crest shot up. All the weight moved forward onto the front limbs. Bray did not move. To her credit, she did not run. She stood exactly where she was, and Dara watched her hands shake and said nothing about it. 40 seconds. Rin's full attention locked on Bray, reading her the way predators read anything unfamiliar. Every muscle in the hatchling's body was coiled. Bray was standing very, very still. Dara stepped slightly to the side and placed the second container on the floor between Rin and Bray. She opened the top. Rin's attention moved to the container, then back to Bray, then to Dara, then it sat down. It did not eat immediately, but it sat. Bray exhaled very slowly through her nose. They stayed in the room for 8 more minutes. Rin ate eventually. It did not approach Bray. It positioned itself near Dara and watched Bray from that distance, which was a very different thing from the way it had first looked at her. Afterward, Bray stood in the corridor and did not speak for a long time. Then she said to Sevik, "A Union biologist transmitted a note to my vessel during the journey. I did not include it in my initial briefing because I wanted to assess the situation first." She paused. "When a Vreth hatchling establishes a bond pattern, the elder of its bloodline will locate it. They always do. The tracking mechanism is not fully understood. It cannot be blocked." Sevik said, "When?" Bray said, 4 days at most, probably less." The corridor was quiet. Somewhere down the hall, a ventilation unit hummed. Novel's voice came through the camera intercom, very small. "Does anyone want to tell Dara, or should I?" The Elder's ship did not answer hails. It dropped out of transit and docked with the kind of calm that was more frightening than any display of force, because it meant the Elder was not concerned about opposition. It did not need to be. It was the most dangerous living thing within 6 sectors, and every creature on Vora's station understood that in the oldest, quietest part of their nervous system, the part that did not need to be taught. By the time the docking seal locked, the lower corridor was empty. The mid-level corridor was empty. The canteen was empty. Sevik had not ordered an evacuation. He had not needed to. Every species on the station had simply gone somewhere else at the same moment by instinct, the way birds leave before a storm. The Elder walked. It was 4 times the size of Rin. Its scales were the deep gray of old stone. Its crest was massive and held high and still. It moved slowly because it did not need to move fast. Every camera on the station tracked it in silence. Sevik watched from the bridge. Bray stood beside him. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them had anything useful to say. The Elder moved through the mid-level corridor, past the sealed canteen, down the junction, toward the lower level, toward the cargo wing. Bray said, "We need to warn Dara." Sevik was already on the comm. The line connected after 2 seconds. He said, "Dara, the Elder is on the station. It is heading for the cargo wing. You need to." She said, "I know, I can hear it." Sevik said, "Then you need to come out." She said, "If I leave now, Rin will be alone when it arrives. That is worse." The line stayed open. Sevik watched the camera feed. He watched the Elder reach the lower corridor. He watched it stop at the blast door. He watched it push the blast door open without engaging the mechanism, simply pushing, because the door was not built to stop something that large. Inside, Dara had stood up. She was on her feet, facing the door, with her recorder in her hand and Rin at her left side. The Elder came in. It was the kind of size that changes the shape of a room. The ceiling was high enough, barely. It stopped 4 meters inside the cargo wing and looked at Rin. Rin made a low sound. Not aggression, something else. A sound that the Vreth behavioral database listed as contact vocalization. Documented only between members of the same bloodline. The Elder looked at Rin for a long time. Then it looked at Dara. Dara did not step back. This was, by every measure known to every species watching the camera feed, an act of extraordinary recklessness. An adult Vreth Elder, reading an unfamiliar creature, receiving no submission signal, no retreat, no fear response. What it received instead was a human woman standing still with a data recorder in her hand, looking back at it with the same calm expression she used when she was waiting for a variable to resolve. The Elder moved closer. It lowered its head. Dara held the eye contact and let it come. It smelled the air around her. It was very close now. Sevik had stopped breathing. Bray's hand was on the emergency alert panel and she had not pressed it yet, and she did not know how much longer she could hold. The Elder looked at Rin. Rin was pressed against Dara's side. The Elder looked at the space. The feeding containers neatly stacked. The crate with the slight worn mark where Dara sat every day. The organized, small evidence of routine care. It looked at Rin's posture, the flat crest, the calm weight, the health that was visible in the scales and the eyes of a hatchling that had been fed and left undisturbed and given time. The elder made a sound, low and long, untranslatable by any database on the station. Then it walked to the far corner of the room, the large corner near the rear wall. It lowered itself down onto its haunches. It folded its limbs. It looked at Dara. And it stayed. Dara looked at it for a moment. Then she sat back down on her crate. She opened her recorder. She said, "Day 23. Vreth Elder has entered the cargo wing and has taken a resting position in the northeast corner. Rin is calm. Elder posture is settled, not aggressive." She paused. "This is going to require a new section in my log structure." On the bridge, Bray very quietly sat down on the floor. She did not have a reason. Her legs had simply decided they were done. Sevik opened a comm channel to the cargo wing. He said, "Dara." She said, "Yes." "Is there anything you need?" She said, "A second cot and more protein slurry, significantly more. Can you double the daily requisition?" He said he would take care of it. He sat in his chair for a long time after the line closed, looking at the camera feed. The elder in the corner, Rin near the human writing notes. He thought about what it cost a creature to sit down in a room instead of destroying it. He thought about what quality in a person would make that choice make sense. He did not have a clean word for it, but he thought he was starting to understand what it looked like. The days that followed were quiet in a way the station had not been quiet in weeks. The elder did not leave. It ate the doubled protein ration that arrived every morning. It watched Dara. It watched Rin. It watched the way Dara moved through the cargo wing, and the way Rin followed her movements without being called, and the way she spoke out loud into her recorder without ever raising her voice. After 3 days, it stopped tracking the blast door every time it opened. After 5 days, it stopped tracking Dara at all when she crossed the room. It simply existed in the same space. And that, according to every Vreth behavioral record in the Union database, was unprecedented. Dr. Novel finally came into the cargo wing on day 26. He lasted 11 minutes before he left, but he got what he needed: close visual confirmation of the hatchling's dorsal measurements, and a voice note that took him 40 minutes to dictate because his hands were shaking too much to type. He and Dara began working on a joint paper. Their working title was clinical and 12 words long. The content was unlike anything that had been written before. Sevik started sleeping again, not well but some. Bray filed her assessment with the Galactic Union. It was the longest report of her career. The summary section alone was 4 pages. The footage was attached. The behavioral data was attached. Novel's preliminary notes were attached. She marked the threat level as reclassified, non-standard, and the recommended action as continued supervised observation under current conditions. She added a personal note at the end that she had never included in any prior assessment. It said, "I have no framework for this. I recommend we build one." The Union called a formal hearing 2 weeks later. Bray presented. The chamber was full. Senior members from 9 species organizations, researchers, security directors, policy advisors. They watched the footage in complete silence. The image of Dara asleep with Rin against her side had already circulated across every major Union news network. Some outlets had run it with alarming headlines. Others had run it with no headline at all because no headline fit. The chamber asked questions. Bray answered them. Sevik gave a statement by transmission. Novel presented his data. Then the chamber asked to hear from Dara directly. She spoke for 7 minutes. She described her methods. She described her observations. She answered the technical questions without hesitation and the political questions with the kind of patience that suggested she had very little interest in politics. Near the end, a senior Gorathi council member asked her, What do you believe you did that made this possible? Dara was quiet for a moment, not because she did not have an answer, because she was deciding whether the answer would be useful. Then she said, I did not treat it like a threat before it behaved like one. That is all. The chamber did not respond to that immediately. The Galactic Union's formal decision came 3 days later. Vora's station would remain active. The Elder and the Hatchling would remain under Dara's observation as long as conditions stayed stable. A new position was created in the Union's Xenobiology Division, Vreth Behavioral Liaison, first of its kind, reporting jointly to the research and diplomatic branches. The offer was sent to Dara. She read it in the cargo wing that evening, sitting in her usual spot, with Rin asleep near her right leg and the Elder settled and still in the far corner. She read it twice. She sent back one response. It said she accepted and had one condition. The coffee ration on Vora's station was inadequate and she wanted it corrected before she signed anything formal. She was told the ration would be reviewed. She accepted. That night she wrote her final entry for the original observation log before opening a new one for the extended study period. The entry read, Day 30. No new incidents. Both subjects stable. Feeding schedule holding. Elder has begun leaving the cargo wing for short independent periods and returning without incident. Rin has started bringing things to the observation area, mostly pieces of packing material. Purpose unclear, will document. She stopped. Then she added, The Elder snores, it is very loud. I am logging this for completeness and also because Novel will want to know. She closed the file and looked up at the cargo wing around her. It was still dim. It still smelled metallic and sharp. The crates were still stacked in long rows. It looked almost exactly the way it had on the first night she had walked in with a container of protein slurry and sat on a crate and waited. She turned off her recorder, folded her arms on the edge of the crate, put her head down and went to sleep. From the far corner the Elder watched her. Its crest was flat, its breathing was slow. After a while it closed its eyes too.